evening. Now, a volatile day saw Dalal Street close the session flat. Markets fell for the fifth straight day, posting its biggest losing streak since June 2022. Nifty and Sensex failed to hold on to intraday gains to end mildly in the red. The broader markets fared slightly better than the blue chips. BSE companies have erased a market capitalization of over 7 lakh crore rupees in 5 sessions. For the series, Nifty lost 2% to record its biggest fall in a series since September. Surabhi Upadhyay is here with all of the day's trading action. Surabhi?
Well, this is a market that seems to be in no man's land. Nothing is moving it. The bulls will, however, see this as a sign of relief, considering the huge drubbing that we saw yesterday in trade. Today was a very cautious session right from the word go. The market was trading in a very narrow 120 to about 150 point trading band. We did have the monthly expiry played out, so there was some volatility around 3 o'clock. But net result is that we've closed at the flat line with absolutely no sense of direction whatsoever. The talking points continue to be the same, direction of interest rates and whether the RBI will hike again in April, what the Fed is doing, rising bond yields in India and obviously internationally. And that's really keeping a lid on momentum. Let me quickly come down to today's movers and shakers. So there was some shine in the metal side of the market, actually metals and commodities. So you had stocks like Hindalco, Tata Steel, a little bit of green on an ONGC for that matter during the course of the day. So some of these names were active. Then you had a couple of the banks that started to come back in towards the close of the session, and that prevented a wider fall. So names like Axis Bank, SBI, Kotak Mahindra Bank, they pretty much sort of held the floor for the market, if I could say that. And then there was, of course, the stock that has been the star of 2023 after being the star of 2022, and I'm talking about ITC. Lifetime highs today for the stock. Once again, it's inching closer to the 400 mark, and that gave some respite to the bulls. But then pressure on the other side. The trends are very unclear, and a lot of the heavier stocks like Reliance, HDFC Bank, they continue to see selling pressure today, and there was not much clarity. Broader markets, well, really it's extremely stock specific in terms of the action. For instance, a Sonata Software today, where the company's gone ahead and done an acquisition, that was in focus. Zee was in focus because of all the ongoings at the NCLT in the company, then challenging that at the NCLAT. Stock was down 15% at one point in time, but then closed with a cut of just about 3 to 4%. So it's extremely stock specific. There isn't a momentum play in this market. And for what it's worth, I mean, the market's really searching for triggers and a sense of direction that doesn't seem to be coming right now.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for all those details, Surabhi. Now, there's no respite for the Adani Group. 8 of the group's 10 listed entities ended the day in the red. Adani Total, Adani Green, Adani Transmission and Adani Power hit lower circuits over the course of the session. The group has lost market capitalization to the tune of 20,000 crore rupees today. This takes the total market cap losses since the Hindenburg report was released on the 24th of January to around 12 lakh crore rupees. As of today, the Adani Group's market capitalization stands at 7.4 lakh crore rupees. Now, Zee Entertainment has moved the NCLAT, seeking a stay on insolvency proceedings. Yesterday, the NCLT, on the back of IndusInd Bank's plea, allowed initiation of insolvency proceedings against the media company. Lata Venkatesh joins us now with more details. Lata, what could this mean for the company's proposed merger with Sony, and what do legal experts have to say about this?
The company Zee Entertainment had no option but to go to NCLAT because the NCLT process has to be stopped. They have to get a stay. If the NCLT process runs, then the promoters and the management are taken off and the committee of creditors will take over the company, which obviously they don't want because they have to run the company and conduct the merger. Now, what are the chances that Zee will get a stay? The chances, according to legal sources, is good because the loan in dispute is not something that Zee has taken from IndusInd. Apparently, what Zee has done is, Zee is itself almost debt-free. It has given a comfort to IndusInd in a loan it has given to its old group company, City Network. And the loan, in technical language, arrangement is called Debt Service Reserve Account. And apparently, the comfort that Zee gave was that it will always ensure that in that account, 1 quarter's interest and principal is maintained. But then City Network became an NP. It defaulted. And now IndusInd is asking Zee to pay up that money because it gave that comfort letter. It is seeing it as a guarantor. Zee has taken IndusInd to the Delhi High Court where it is fighting that case. So chances are Zee will tell NCLAT that this is actually a loan in dispute that IndusInd is trying to take from them, and therefore this NCLT petition should be quashed. Now, does NCLAT have the right? There are precedents that NCLAT can take such a view. The Supreme Court in the Vidarbha Industries case had said that NCLAT can, or for that matter even NCLT, can decide whether to admit a case or not on the merits of the case. And here Z has a good chance of saying that this is a bad case in the first place. The other things that apparently Z can bring forth is that the claim was made by IndusInd during COVID, and at that time many of those cases were not allowed because of the COVID period. So the case is not even maintainable. Z can also argue that when NCLT pronounced the judgment, it had not allowed Z to make a case. It had only taken written submission, not entertained them in person, and therefore procedure was not followed. According to Legal, Z has a good chance of getting a stay, but until the stay comes, you can't be sure.
Right, Lata. Many thanks for those details. Now, Bengaluru is playing host to the first major G20 event under India's leadership. Finance ministers and central bank governors will get into a huddle and discuss several issues plaguing the global economy. My colleague Parikshit Luthra gets us the latest from Bengaluru. Parikshit?
The first major meeting under India's G20 presidency is taking place. During this finance track meeting, finance ministers and central bank governors from G20 nations are brainstorming on issues plaguing the global economy. Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman has held 10 bilateral meetings, including one with US Secretary for Treasury Janet Yellen. Yellen hit out at Russia in a press conference and said building support for Ukraine will be her #1 priority during the G20 meetings. She also urged China to agree to proposals on debt restructuring to help countries like Zambia and Sri Lanka. Listen in to what Janet Yellen had to say.
I will continue to push for all bilateral official creditors, including China, to participate in meaningful debt treatments for developing countries and emerging markets in distress. I will also be discussing international coordination on debt restructuring for middle-income countries. In emerging markets, financial conditions remain relatively tight, but have begun to show signs of easing. At the same time, we know that a number of vulnerable countries continue to face acute distress. We're not out of the woods yet. So I'm looking forward to the opportunity this week to continue our close communication with other major economies. We've worked with countries to avoid export restrictions and enable food to flow more freely, including through the Black Sea Grain Initiative.
The outgoing president of the World Bank, David Malpass, has said that the world needs to find an answer to inflation concerns. He also hoped that the G20 will come to an agreement on debt resolution for emerging economies. Listen in to what he told our managing editor, Shireen Bhan.
Reconciling the debts of the various players, that's been taking a long time within the debt restructuring process. So reconcile the debts, agree that what you're trying to do is have comparable treatment across the various creditors, and then find ways to resolve some of the barriers. On China, important is they are still including non-disclosure clauses in some of their contracts. That makes it very difficult to do the restructuring. They take collateral, which is not really necessary, and also escrow accounts. China itself can benefit from this. It's one of the biggest exporters, often the biggest to many parts of the world, and so it can benefit if there's faster growth in the countries.
On the sidelines of this G20 meeting, I caught up with Brazil's ambassador to India, Andre Arana Correa de Lago, and I asked him about Brazil's priorities, also how the Ukraine war will impact discussions at the G20 meeting in Bengaluru, and the issue of climate finance. Listen in.
Climate finance has already been extremely debated and agreed under the Convention on Climate Change. So there is a line that has already been approved. Now what we need is really to implement what we know are the necessities of the world. So naturally, everywhere the ministers of finance are key for being able to make sure the resources that will fight climate change will be available. So it is natural that in a discussion like that, this issue can be raised and we hope advance significantly.
That's all the action from the G20 summit in Bangalore. Now, the export curbs and wheat policy will not be relaxed until the government completes procurement operations. That's the word from A.K. Meena, chairman at the Food Corporation of India. He spoke to CNBC-TV18's Abhimanyu Sharma and expressed confidence about wheat procurement this year. Take a look.
In the OMS's sale, out of the 18 lakh metric ton already sold, 11 lakh metric ton has been lifted till now, and we expect a good procurement to take place next year. See, I would like to state clearly that FCI cannot comment on the export policy, but our understanding is that we will meet the requirement of our country first, and therefore there is no question of allowing any relaxation in the export policy relating to wheat at all till we complete our procurement operations. Procurement operations generally will take place in April and May.
The Bombay High Court has quashed the enforcement case information report against Jet Airways founder Naresh Goyal and his wife Anita in a money laundering case that was registered in February 2020. The High Court said the report was illegal and is contrary to the law. Amid ongoing layoffs in tech companies, e-commerce giant Flipkart has decided not to hand out increments to about 30% of its employees in the current cycle. This move will impact 4,500 of its senior staff. In an email sent to its employees, the company said that it will now prioritize employees at grade 9 and below. However, bonus payouts and stock option allotment are on track as planned. In a bid to cut costs, Google's parent company Alphabet has announced that it will cut 240 jobs from its operations in Ireland. That's not all. Google is also asking its cloud employees and partners to share desks starting next quarter. The new desk sharing model will apply to Google Cloud's 5 largest US locations. On that note, it is time for us to head into a short break, but coming up next, reports of